Hello, welcome to another Scientific Baits podcast. This one is the December blog. It's a little bit later than I'd planned to do it. I was hoping to maybe get it out before Christmas, but as we all know, Christmas is a busy time of year, but quite a big family, lots of grandchildren. So it's now the 1st of January. I'm just having time to record this month's blog, the December blog. So, what I'd like to do at first is wish everybody a happy new year. Hope we've all had a good Christmas, and hopefully we can look forward to a good 2024. Didn't do an awful lot of fishing last year myself. Quite busy with bait. A few things changed in my circumstances, which meant I think I only did on the main waters that I've got the tickets for. I think I did about 14 nights, so not a lot. Not a lot at all, really. But there we go. I had a few nice fish, nothing massive. Few nice 20s, scaly ones, £27. So they're all more than welcome, but not really the fish that I'm targeting at the moment, because I'm after some real big fish. But as we all know, if the fish are big, the waters are never easy. You never get waters that are easy. They've got real big fish in. I suppose there's the odd exception to the rule, but as a general rule of thumb, they're not big for nothing. They're not big because they keep getting caught all the time. They're normally big because they don't get caught all the time, and there's plenty of food in the waters for them to eat. So there we go. Right, the first thing I'd like a little chat about is betaine. Now, don't know if everybody will be aware, but a chap named Patrick Mills, Dr. Patrick Mills, is an expat. He lives in America. And he went on to the Carp Chronicles podcast quite a long time ago now. I think it was about 3 years ago, not long after I first went on there. And he had the opinion, well, he has the opinion, that betaine is not really effective. So what's the deal with betaine? Well, what I'd like to point out is that all Patrick's work all centers around amino acid receptors, because betaine is basically, it's an amino acid of sorts. And Patrick's work suggests that it doesn't really generate much of a response from carp. So this is mainly, from what I can understand, mainly due to the fact that because it's an amino acid derivative, that the shape of the amino group is slightly enlarged, I think Patrick said, so it doesn't fit the amino acid receptor too well. So that's all well and good, but he did say it was detectable. So obviously carp know it's there. Now I've got quite a few angles that I can come at this from. I'm not refuting Patrick's work because it's good work and it's all done scientifically. It's all done in a laboratory, etc. He's got lots of facilities, but he only talks about the amino acid receptors, and that's quite an important fact. Now, what I will say about betaine and how I think it works, and I think it does work in bait, is because carp can detect it. Let's say we're just talking about the fact that the amino acid receptors, it doesn't generate a particularly strong response, but they know it's there. Well, you could liken this type of situation to say cooking foods, cooking different dishes. Now, if we're all presented with a sample of, say, paprika powder and we taste it, we're not going to get a massive degree of stimulation. And you wouldn't want to eat a bag of paprika, would you? But if you've got dishes that you prepare and paprika is part of the dish, part of the recipe, then I'm quite sure that the end result, minus the paprika, will be quite different. So it may not well taste the same, may well not taste the same. It won't generate the same taste response in human beings. And this is how I look at betaine to a degree, that it's just part of the jigsaw. It possibly works in a synergistic way in combination with other molecules. Because if we look in nature, if we look in nature, then betaine, a basic description of betaine is that it's what's known as an osmolyte. It stops aquatic creatures from, it stops them from, it allows them to balance their water intake and water loss, basically. It's an osmolyte. It's an osmolyte. Now, because it's an osmolyte, it's found, betaine, trimethylglycine, is found in lots and lots of the carp's natural food items. It's definitely found in shrimps. It's definitely found in crayfish, mussels. I'm quite sure it's found in Daphnia, diatoms, small algae, etc. So, as I say, generally, these things are found in natural food items. And Patrick does not refute the idea, the notion that carp can detect betaine. He just says it doesn't generate a particularly strong response. And that may well be a scientific fact. That might be the case with these amino acid receptors. Now, I will throw another thing into the mix now that I've spoken about before, various podcasts that I've done, that the carp do not only possess these specific receptor sites, the amino acid receptors, etc., organic acid receptors, others that respond to sugars. They also possess a particularly interesting set of receptors that are called solitary chemosensory cells. Now, these things have been shown to be responsive to an enormous range of molecules, an enormous range. They've not been studied to the same degree as the amino acid receptors, etc. So they're a bit of an unknown quantity. And my personal belief is that betaine is definitely detected by carp, 100%. And I would say that if the carp detects betaine in a bait, that it would replicate the natural food items in the lake better, because they will find lots of these natural food items that have got amino acids coming out of them, organic acids, etc., excreta, etc., sugars. They will also have betaine there. There will also be betaine there, along with other things like carotenoids, which I think play a big part in natural food recognition, because carotenoids are found in lots of natural food items. If you don't know what carotenoids are, the pigments. The pigments, I think I've spoke about it before with regard to paprika. Paprika is very rich in carotenoids. Again, representative of natural food. So there we go. There we go. My take on betaine is that it is definitely detected by carp, and I think it can generate some sort of a response, although Patrick suggests that the response in the amino acid receptors from betaine, because of this enlarged amino group, is a very poor reaction. My experience from using betaine, testing it in baits, is that it makes a difference. It certainly makes a difference. I don't think you need it in every formula, particularly fish meal baits. I would say it may well not make much of a difference in a fish meal bait, but my experience with betaine is that carp can detect it, and it's certainly a useful addition to bait. One more thing before I finish on betaine is that I particularly only use anhydrous betaine, and where possible, I use natural anhydrous betaine and not synthetic anhydrous betaine. I'm not much for betaine HCl. I have used it. Not much for the hydrochloride stuff, the betaine hydrochloride, which has been championed in the past by NutriBaits, etc. I think that I've had lots of problems with using that form of betaine. It's created a few issues when it's mixed with other things because it's acidic. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like the betaine HCl. There is other reasons. But my advice for anyone who wants to use betaine or wants a bait that's got betaine in is always go for the natural anhydrous betaine, trimethylglycine. So there we go. There we go. That's the opener to this month's blog. And I'll just have a little chat again about A few catches again, a few catch reports again to the H.X.B. There's been a few people catching a few fish on the H.X.B. And if you remember the last time I spoke about a chap who was catching wild straight away on the H.X.B. on a reasonably well-stocked lake, quite a good sized lake, around about 20 acres, I think. And lo and behold, in December, he sent me a catch report of a 39.8, which is a very big fish for the lake, and a 21, both caught on the H.X.B. And he also had, I think, another 20 in the same session on the Frankie mix. And lo and behold, as well, there'd only been one fish out of that lake in 10 days. And then he went on and caught 3. And there's nobody else on that lake using any of my baits. And that's only the second time that the H.X.B's been introduced into that water, cold water conditions. So already 2 sessions on the H.X.B. I think he's had a 32, a 39.8, a 28, and a 21. Not a bad return for November and December. Not a bad return. And the H.X.B, it really is a good bait, especially in the cold weather. It contains cinnamon, essential oil, and powdered cinnamon. Now, cinnamon is thermogenic. A lot of people will probably know what that means. It means it generates heat in your body. So it actually elevates your core body temperature to some degree when you ingest cinnamon. And I think this is something that you can exploit, particularly with baits for the cold water conditions. Now, the elevation in the body temperature and probably the slight boost for the metabolic rate is minuscule, but wild animals quite often seem to respond even to these minimalistic changes in the metabolism and core body temperature. I mean, the carp's exotherm, it's a cold-blooded creature. So yeah, I mean, cinnamon, I've always found cinnamon after reading early things about, that Rod Hutchinson wrote about a long time ago. He suggested cinnamon in the cold weather, and I've used cinnamon right back to the 90s in all seasons, and it's always been good in various forms, both flavors, essential oils, powdered, cinnamon powder, the powdered spice. So yeah, it's been very good. It's been very good, and the other reason why the H.X.B, the attraction of the H.X.B is particularly good in cold weather is because it's essential oil based. Now, essential oils, they're not like any man-made flavors, any synthetic flavors. The molecular size is absolutely tiny in essential oils, and obviously tiny molecular size means that they're going to react better in an environment where all the molecules are moving slowly. The kinetics of the water all change. It's cold, less energy there. So the tiny molecular size means that they react better and they leave the bait more readily and go into the water. So this obviously helps with attraction. You know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that something that's of a small molecular size is going to work better in cold water. And then the other factor in the H.X.B, another factor that I was mindful of during the design of the bait was sugar, adding sugar to the bait. There's various things in that bait that add to the sugar content. And I have found that sugar is a very good attractor. Sugar-based liquids are very good attractors. Just having a swig of my cup of tea there. Sugar-based liquids are very, very good attractors in cold weather. Learn this from historical things. Lots of talk about Richwith, Tooties, etc., which had a lot of sugar in. And I was pointed in the right direction by a few people over the years about sugar, and everything that these particularly learned chaps had suggested to me, it seems to be true. And the H.X.B has got a good helping of molasses in there, which is rich in sucrose, and then it's got the monosaccharides, glucose and fructose, and it seems to work very well. It seems to work very well in tandem with the cinnamon. in the cold water. And I think it's this little thing where it gives the carp a little bit of a energy hit straight away from the sugar, which they seem to enjoy in the cold weather because they're not eating a lot of food. They don't need a lot of food. And that sugar-based attraction seems to work well. And it doesn't only work well in the cold weather. Talk about that another time, but it seems to work extremely well in cold water. Now, another key component in the H.X.B is the calf milk powder. The calf milk powder. Now, you hear people talking about calf milk powders, but there's many different calf milk powders on the market. And the one that I have used the most, and I always try and use it as long as I can get hold of it. It's normally always available, but been a few issues over the last few years with COVID, etc. But I've still managed to, I'd say 95% of the bait that I've rolled since 2020 has all had the original calf milk powder in that I use. And one very, very interesting aspect of this calf milk powder, which drew me to it straight away a long time ago, when I first started using this calf milk powder, which was, I mean, I'd already used calf milk powders, but I started using this particular one. I think it was in 2009. 2009 is that it's got hydrolyzed wheat gluten in there. Now, most people who listen into my podcasts or have heard my podcasts on other outlets is that I'm big on this opioid peptide issue. Now, obviously, a calf milk powder that's got hydrolyzed wheat gluten in there is a possible source of wheat opioid peptides. I'll say no more on that, but let's just say I put quite a substantial chunk of this calf milk powder into the H.X.B formula, and it's extremely effective. I definitely think it makes a difference to the bait. It's obviously soluble, so it leaches out of the bait, helps with breakdown times. And then there's also two other extremely important things added to this calf milk powder because it's got the ingredients list on the bag. When you buy these calf milk powders from the manufacturers, because they're fed to animals, the ingredients list is on the bag. So you know exactly what you're getting. You know exactly what you're getting. And the one that I use has got palm oil in it and coconut oil. Now, both of these oils are very important for the nutrition for the calves, I would say. For the cows that's going to get fed this, but also for carp and carp anglers using these ingredients in the baits, they are a form of what's known as medium chain triglycerides. Now, I never used to have the things in this calf milk powder under this banner until I heard other people talking about it, about medium chain triglycerides, MCTs, if you like. I think Jason Ryder spoke about it quite a lot when he did a podcast with Sam from Carp Chronicles. But I knew what things were in this calf milk powder from the coconut oil, the palm oil, etc., that were attractive to the fish, but I didn't put them under this MCT banner because I didn't realize that that's what some people called them. I always just had them down as organic acids, which is what they are. And they're very similar to butyric acid, but butyric acid is not a medium chain triglyceride because its molecular size is smaller. It's butyric acid is what's known as a volatile fatty acid. Now, these medium chain triglycerides are slightly different because they're bigger, they're bigger molecules, but again, they're organic acids and they seem to be attractive in their own right, these medium chain triglycerides. I think Jason did tests on them and he found out that they were very effective, very attractive in cold water. So, as we can see, again, something that's not particularly soluble, particularly in cold water, is very attractive. Now, I think it's because that they're organic acids, they're reactive, so they ionize in the water, and you've got molecules in there like lauric acid, again, not particularly soluble. But something's going on with them. Caproic acid, which has got a bit of a name now, and capric acid, caprylic acid. As I say, I think all these medium chain triglycerides, I think they're sources of ionizable attraction. So I think that's how these things are working. To be honest with you, I think it's all about the attraction process that's going on with these different organic acids. Because you've got to remember, although they're called medium chain triglycerides, they are still under the banner of carboxylic acids, organic acids, if you like. So they're still reactive. So that's a bit more information again, a bit more clarification, elucidation, if we like, about the attraction mechanisms in the H.X.B. And the H.X.B is not the only bait that I add these calf milk powders to. I also add that calf milk powder at the same level to the red devil bait, which is another extremely effective bait in cold weather. Again, people talk about oils, keep the oil levels down in winter. Well, that calf milk powder that I use, I think it's 23% oil. It's extremely oily. But it's extremely effective. I think people get the wrong end of the stick with oils in winter as far as carp are concerned and attraction, because all oils are not the same. So there we go. That's a little bit more of a chat on something I haven't spoken about before, these palm oils, coconut oils, MCTs, medium chain triglycerides. And they're very effective. I know that Jason is very, very much into these MCTs. Jason Ryder thinks they're extremely effective, and I agree with him. I didn't look at it from exactly the same angle as Jason, using the same nomenclature, if you like, but once I realised what he was talking about, I was definitely in concurrence with what he was saying. So then we get down to another extremely important ingredient in the H.X.B, and that's calcium caseinate. Now, calcium caseinate is fairly widely used ingredient. Well, it has been historically. Not sure how many people actually use this ingredient these days, because it's quite expensive, and a lot of expensive bait ingredients these days, I don't think they really get used at the proper levels. I think sometimes they might be used for the benefits that they have with functional properties, firming baits up, etc. But I use the calcium caseinate in the H.X.B at a reasonably good level. It contributes to the soluble aspect of the bait, and it also adds to the casein content, which again is important for this opioid peptide interaction, this liberation of opioid peptides in the carp's gut during digestion, that I think plays a big part in a bait's success, particularly after repeated introductions of the bait. Get the carp onto these baits and get them hooked, if you like, get them hooked onto the bait. People may think that I put far too much emphasis on this, but this is the belief that I've got, a strong belief that this is a very important factor in a bait success. Now, calcium caseinate that I've generally always used, same again. I have changed it a few times over the years, but I generally use one called IP4, calcium caseinate IP4. It's from Armour Proteins, French company. And when I used to sell a lot of the H.X.B, I used to buy this by the sackful from Baccaral, 20 kilo sacks, and it's always been fairly expensive. It's gone up a bit now, but as I say, it's soluble. Now, one thing about casein is that it is rich in the amino acid proline. Now, it's a little bit technical, I suppose, getting down to the amino acid level in an ingredient, but I did a lot of research a long time ago into cold shock proteins. Now, if you don't know anything about cold shock proteins, They're involved in protecting animals from obviously cold conditions. It's a widely accepted phenomenon that many fish produce these cold shock proteins. Now, it's a long time ago when I did the research. Now, don't quote me on this, the letter. I'm not sure if I could find any specific reference to carp producing these cold shock proteins, but there's lots of references to other fish, etc. And now, the interesting thing about these cold shock proteins is that they are rich in the amino acid proline. Now, obviously, milk proteins are rich in proline, so a logical progression from this, if you like, could be that carp like to seek out milk proteins, particularly casein, cold weather conditions, because it helps them. It helps them. This proline source may help them to protect the bodies during cold weather. But so yeah, I won't go into that too much. It's something for you to think about. Definitely something I've thought about a lot over the years. And proline is an extremely interesting amino acid because it's implicated in lots of things because of because of different things that I've researched. I mean, proline is not what is termed an essential amino acid for the carp because they can produce it in their body. But from my research, I personally think that proline is a funny amino acid in so much as I think that at certain times of the year, carp may need more of it and it becomes an essential requirement in the carp's diet. That'll go against everything that you'll see written about the amino acid requirements in carp. But I think proline is an essential amino acid. I think it's conditionally essential at certain times of the year. That's my opinion on it. That's my opinion on it. So the other important aspect with these milk proteins, calcium caseinate, casein, even whey protein, is that some of them are soluble, but due to the alkaline nature of the carp's gut is alkaline in nature. It needs to be because its digestive enzymes work optimally. I think about pH, I think it's pH 8, pH 9, the trypsin and chymotrypsin. So the carp's digestive secretions are alkaline. It's got no acidic digestive stage. And this alkaline gut, luckily for us, it solubilizes milk casein. So it makes an ingredient which, let's say, acid casein, that's not traditionally soluble in the alkaline pH of the carp's gut. This becomes solubilized. Which obviously has implications for the digestibility of the bait. Now, I also team that up with a reasonably good fiber content in the H.X.B. And although the H.X.B is it's reasonably high in protein, I think, without looking at my spec book, I have got the specifications written down in one of the books, one of my notepads. I think the H.X.B is round about 35% protein. That's the finished bait. That's after the egg dilution. So it's round about what you would term classically perfect for a carp at 35% protein. And I know full well that the amino acid profile of the bait very much satisfies the carp's amino acid requirements. It's got good vitamin content, it's got a fat source, carbohydrates. So the bait definitely comes under the high nutritional value banner. You know, it's definitely a HMV bait. And as I say, the results with the H.X.B year round have been very good. And as you can see from the information that I'm giving you during this blog, this December blog, that the H.X.B is a well-designed bait. It's very well suited, despite being reasonably high in protein. It's very well suited to cold water conditions. It's totally different. It's coming from a totally different angle than the Red Devil, which the Red Devil is only in retrospect, the Red Devil is only 17% protein. So, it's a lot different in its makeup than the H.X.B. It's the Red Devil is the lowest protein bait that I sell. But I was coming at it from a totally different angle. I wanted to get the wheat content as high as possible. But it's still another bait that's very effective in cold weather. It's more sugary than the H.X.B, but there are similar elements in there. And they're both good in cold weather. They're both good in cold weather. So that's about as much as I wanted to chat about during this brief December blog. As I say, it's January the 1st now. I still haven't been fishing. I've not been fishing now for 4 months. And I suppose some people will say, well, why don't you just try and do an overnighter, which I probably would do if the waters that I fished were closer to home and I could go and have a look, do a bit of a recce, get an idea where the fish are. But don't mind doing 24-hour sessions, but I've been quite busy this year with bait. As I say, circumstances have changed, so I haven't been now for 4 months. But I am planning on getting out fishing. I am missing fishing now. I really am missing fishing. But as we say, you have to keep the wolf from the door. Got to keep the money coming in. Keep trying to earn a bit of money. You got to keep the customers happy. Get the bait done. And I've been busy with a few other things. I've had quite a few messages about the next book that I'm planning on getting completed. That's definitely going to take longer than I initially have relayed to people. Don't think that book will be ready until the spring. I don't think that'll be ready until the spring. I don't want to rush it. Don't want to rush it at all. I've got a chapter that I've got to finish off that I'm writing for a book, a bait book that I'm writing, a chapter for it, and that's had to take precedence over my own book because it needs to be done to a deadline. My book doesn't really need to be done to a deadline. Well, it does for some people because some people have told me they can't wait until I've finished doing it. So, but yeah, I would say that my next book will probably be up for sale at some point in the spring. Yeah, I'd say it's going to be a few months, definitely yet. I don't want to rush it. There's lots more stuff in there, stuff I'd like to get in there. So yeah, that's about as much as I fancied covering. As I say, spread the word about these podcasts. There's definitely a few hundred people, which might not sound like a lot, but a few hundred people listening to a small bait company's podcasts. That's quite a lot of potential customers to a small business like me. So I'm more than happy to keep doing these podcasts. The feedback I get from the people that listen to them is very encouraging, very encouraging. People seem to enjoy these podcasts. They like the technical side that I'm talking about. And obviously, I'd like to think that most of the things I speak about, although they're not entirely unique, I've got a different slant on a lot of things than what most people would have heard about historically. So there we have it. Covered everything I wanted to cover in a podcast again. And I'll sign off there, I think. Anybody wants me to talk about anything in particular, I have asked people before, but as I say, was planning on getting this done before Christmas, but well, a busy old Christmas. I've even been into work over Christmas, so yeah. And I'm back in work tomorrow, rolling bait. So thanks for listening. Spread the word, and bye for now.